enter the details about that. So this is what the topological recursion gives, and I hope that in this lecture we will prove this formula from topological recursion. So this is my goal, is to arrive there. So let me take a few other examples. There is the result conifold.
What does that mean? Was this not the definition of the omega G0?
No, it's the result. So what I can, so I didn't write the topological recursion, but I say that if you take that as initial data of a recursion, the result, so the output of a recursion, will be that number. It's a theorem. It's not the definition. It's the result of a computation. Another example is the result conifold. So take, for instance, 1 plus x plus y plus e to the minus t xy.
Sorry, what was lambda again?
Sorry?
Lambda again? What is
Lambda is the Hodge class. So it's the class of the Hodge bundle. The total Chern class of a Hodge bundle. Okay, so take this curve, which also Denis Auroux mentioned in his lectures, I think. Or, okay, and again you have to do a framing transformation, so 1 plus y to the f and y to the f plus 1. Okay, take that curve and run the topological recursion on it. And the result will be the Gromov-Witten invariance of the result conifold. So this curve is the mirror of the result conifold. Another example is local P2. Local P2, the curve is also, this one I'm sure was written by Denis. 1 plus y plus e to the minus t over xy equals 0. This is a genus 1 curve. This one is a genus 0 curve. This one is a genus 1 curve. But you could have any genus, doesn't matter. And again, I think here the framing transformation is maybe not necessary. I don't remember. Okay, let's do a framing transformation. So this is a framed mirror curve of local P2. You run the recursion on it, and again, what you will get are the Gromov-Witten invariants of local P2.
Why do you need to do these transformations, these frame transformations? Like you don't get the Gromov-Witten invariants?
Well, there is some subtlety, but here, in fact, so just let me give you the topological recursion explanation, why you need it on the topological recursion side. You will see that it will be necessary that this curve is a branch cover of CP1, so we need at least one branch point, and for f equals 0, there is no branch point. But in fact, the omega G0s are in fact independent of the framing number. So, okay, so this was for the examples. Now let's go to a more concrete computation. Okay, so as I said, just to finish with that, the BKMP conjecture in 2008 was the claim that was precisely that claim. If you run the topological recursion on these curves, you will find the Gromov-Witten numbers. This was their claim in 2008. They were physicists. They had the proof that can be, okay, they had the proof in the physicist sense, but it was not so satisfactory for mathematicians. So we found a proof later in 2012. So for many years it remained a conjecture. The first proof was in 2012 with my student Orentin, and in fact we proved it mostly by doing just combinatorics, I would say. And it's because we didn't know about give and tell formalism, otherwise we could have shortened the proof much more. And in fact, Melissa Liu and Fang and Zong proved the general case in a much more efficient way, and also for orbifolds 1 year later. And their method is more efficient. Okay. No, I will see into the recent file. I'm going to erase here. So let's go into more details. So now let's write the topological recursion, at least in the example of the Airy curve, which was the simplest example. So so we start from this curve, y squared minus x equals 0, which I parameterize by z a point on a certain Riemann surface, on x, on y, two functions. Let me write it here. So we have sigma, which will be CP1. We have a function x that sends z to z squared, and the function y that sends z to z. And these two functions make an immersion of sigma into C cross C. Another object which will be very interesting is, let me call it this immersed sigma in C cross C. Another object which will be very interesting for me, let me call it eta. Eta is just the one form y dx. It's a one form on sigma. It's a meromorphic. It's a meromorphic one form on sigma. And it is the restriction of one form of the tautological one form. Sorry. No, sorry, I need to say something else. In fact, here the first C corresponds to x, the second C corresponds to y. And in fact, you could think of the first C, the second C, instead of using y as a coordinate, use y dx. Basically, you are using the isomorphisms between C and the cotangent space of C. So C is isomorphic to its cotangent space. So just replace this one by the cotangent space of C. And so now you send a point Z into x and y dx instead of xy. So now we are not really anymore in C cross C, but we are in a cotangent space. So this is an immersion of sigma in the total space of the cotangent bundle of C.
You just know the P star C is out first.
Sorry?
You know just the P star C is out first vector.
Yeah, okay. This is the T star at point, so okay, it's T star C, yeah, correct. So this is an immersion into the total cotangent bundle, and in this cotangent bundle, we have a symplectic form dy wedge dx, and eta is the Liouville form. It's the tautological form. The tautological form is such that d eta, so this is d eta. And eta is called the Liouville form. So in fact, we take eta, the tautological. Eta is defined in the whole cotangent space, but now we take its restriction to the image of sigma. And so it's a one form now on sigma. So the Liouville form is the restriction on sigma of the tautological form of the cotangent bundle. Okay, it's very usual in symplectic geometry. So there is another object that I will need to introduce, which is B. Let me just write first a formula. B, it will be a function on sigma cross sigma, and it will be a 1 tensor 1 form, and the coefficient will be z1 minus z2 to the square. So B, in fact, belongs to H0 of sigma cross sigma, and K sigma tensor K sigma twisted with a double pole on the diagonal of sigma cross sigma. Okay? So it's a form that has a double pole at coinciding points and no other pole, and meromorphic on CP1. Meromorphic on CP1. In fact, on the Riemann sphere, there is a unique, on the Riemann sphere, this space is of dimension 1, and you can do Riemann-Roch theorem or just, in fact, elementary derivation. It's of dimension 1, so there is a dimension 1 space of such forms, and if you normalize it to have a 1 here, it's unique. So there is a unique such form on CP1, and it's called the fundamental form of second kind. Second kind because it has a double pole. Okay, so now these are going to be my ingredients. Alright. So now let me define the omega gns. So omega 01, I will define it to be simply eta, and omega 02 will be this b. And then for now for n larger than 1 and 2g minus 2 plus n strictly positive, define. So this is the definition. Omega gn of z1 zn equals residue when z goes to 0 of dz1 over z1 square minus z square for z dz. It may look strange that you have something in the denominator, dz in the denominator, but don't worry, there will be dz square in the numerator. Times, so let me open the bracket here, omega g minus 1 n plus 1 of z minus z z2 zn plus sum g1 plus g2 equals g, and I1, I2, I know this is small, z2 zn of omega g1 1 plus cardinal of I1 z I1 omega g2 1 plus cardinal of I2 minus z I2. Close the bracket. And here, let me write in red, no 0, 1. Okay. This is a strange formula. Let me show you how to make computations with that formula. I don't want to erase that. Okay. Let me show you some computations with that formula. Okay, let me erase it. Okay. What does it mean? First, remember that. So, as I said, we have dz in the denominator. It may look really strange, but remember that here there is a dz there, and there is a minus dz there. So in the numerator you have a dz to the square, divided by dz, it's a dz. So the result, so this multiplication, the result is a 1 form. So you can compute the residue of the 1 form, makes sense, and you take the residue at 0. Let's do some examples explicitly. Let's compute explicitly omega 03. Omega 03 using this formula, z1, z2, z3. So this is residue at 0. Let me keep some space here. Residue at z goes to 0. Well, everything that does not depend on z, let me put it in front. So, for instance, the dz1 on the 1 over 4. So the 1 over 4 on the dz1, you can take them out. So dz1 over 4 times, so this residue, which is 1 over z1 square minus z square, 1 over z times dz, times, and we open the bracket, and inside of the bracket, what do we have? So first here, we have g equals 0, and n equals 3. So in fact, omega g minus 1, well, the convention is that if the index is negative, it does not exist. So this term is absent for omega 03. What are the terms that come from the second line? Well, we have G1 plus G2 equals G, which is 0. So the only possibility is that we have G1 equals 0 and G2 equals 0. And then we want to split the set of variables Z2 to Zn, Z2 to Zn. So here it's just the set Z2, Z3. So we want to find two subsets, I1 complementary. This is a disjoint union, such that this is the set Z2, Z3. Well, we have four possibilities. Either I1 will be the empty set and I2 will be the set Z2, Z3, or I1 would be Z2, I2 would be Z3, or I1 would be Z3, I2 would be Z2, or I1 would be the full set and I2 would be empty. So there are four possibilities. But when you do that, so there is this restriction no 0, 1. You want that there is never an omega 0, 1 appearing here. So it's not possible to choose G1 equals 0 and here I1 the empty set. It's forbidden. Or on the other, also I2 being the empty set is also forbidden. So in fact you have only two terms. And the two terms would be omega 0, so inside this bracket you have omega 02 of Z, Z2, omega 02 of minus Z, Z3, plus omega 02 of Z, Z3, omega 02 of minus Z, Z2. So that's what you have. Now replaced by the values, omega 02, which is B, is just 1 over difference to the square. So we just replace. So this is just dz1 over 4, residue, 1 over z1 square minus z square, 1 over z, so dz times, and here we have 1 over z minus z2 to the square times minus z z3 to the square times dz times minus dz times dz2 times dz3. The dz2 and the dz3, let me put them in front. dz1, dz2, dz3. I was a little bit lazy, but everything is tensor products, of course. I write just product, but it means tensor product, divided by 4. And plus, and now we have dz times minus dz, so that makes a dz now in the numerator, and we have minus sign. Plus 1 over z minus z, z minus z3 to the square, minus z minus z2 to the square. Okay, so now we have to evaluate the residue at 0 of a certain rational function of z. And you see there is a simple pole at z equals 0, it comes only from there. There is only a simple pole. Sorry?
So this, you kept writing 1 over dz.
Yeah.
Was that always dz over z?
No. It's because omega 02 contains a dz in the numerator.
Oh, okay.
And this omega 02 contains a minus dz in the numerator.
Okay.
So you have dz. So basically what I wrote is that dz times minus dz over dz equals minus dz.
Okay.
That's what I wrote. Okay. So now you have to compute the residue of a rational function which has a simple pole at z equals 0. So it's very simple. You just evaluate the value of everything else at z equals 0. You just evaluate at z equals 0. So this will give 1 over z1 square, 1 over z2 square, 1 over z3 square, and also here 1 over z3 square, 1 over z2 square. So in the end, you will have minus dz1, dz2, dz3 over 4 z1 square, z2 square, z3 square, and in fact we get it 2 times, so it's 1 over 2 in fact. Okay. So this is the result. So this is our omega 03. compared to what I said before, if you compare to this writing, you see there is 2 to the power 2 minus 0 minus 3, so 2 to the power minus 1. In fact, I forgot here a minus 1 to the power n. Okay. There is, so there is the minus 1, there is the 1 over 2, times a product of dzi over zi, sorry, this is zi, to the power 2 di plus 2. And so here it's zi to the power 2, so corresponding to di equals 0. And so di plus 1 double factorial is 1. And so this is compatible with this writing, provided that this number is exactly what I wrote before. So basically it implies that the coefficient is tau 0, tau 0, tau 0, 0 equals 1. So basically you can recover this intersection number by this residue computation. Let me do another example, which is omega 1, 1. Okay. I will erase that on residue computation here because I want to keep the other words. So omega 1, 1, we have very little to do. Omega 1, 1, z1 equals, and here the only thing that changes is what there is inside the bracket. What do we have inside the bracket? So now we have genus 1, so omega g minus 1 n plus 2 makes sense. Omega g minus 1 n plus 2 makes sense, and this is indeed the omega 0, 2, so g minus 1 n plus 2. Sorry, I wrote n, yes, sorry, g minus 1 n plus 1, omega 0, 2 evaluated at z on minus z, plus, and there will be this sum, but here in the sum we have g1 plus g2, which must be equal to 1, so at least one of them must be 0. And there is no z2, z3, and so on. This set is empty, so it means I1, I2 must be empty sets. And since one of the g, either g1 or g2 is equal to 0, all terms here are forbidden. So that's all. So let's do this computation. So we just replace. So this is dz1 over 4, residue at 0, 1 over z1 square minus z square, 1 over z dz, and here we have dz times minus dz times z minus minus z, so 2z to the power of 2, so 4z squared. Right? So again, the dz will go away, and this will be a minus dz1 over 16. And let me write that 1 over z1 square minus z square. Let me write it as 1 over z1 square times 1 plus z square over z1 square plus O of z4. Okay, so let me put the 1 over z1 square here in front. Residue at 0 of 1 plus z square over z1 square plus O of z4 times, now we have a z times z square, so we have a 1 over z cube, and we have a dz over z cube. So now we have a triple pole here. This will pick the coefficient of z square in this here. So this will just be minus dz1 over 16 z1 to the 4. And again, if you want to compare to this expression, 2 minus 2g minus 1 is minus 1. So again, this will be compared to minus 1 half. And here it corresponds to d equals 1. And here, so let me put 1 over third times 3 dz1 over z1 to the 4, because this is the term that is here, and times the 1 over 16 now it becomes the 1 over 24. Okay. So this is just equal to that. So I mean, this equals that, you can check easily, and which means that this number 1 over 24 is our coefficient to 1, 1. So again, the residue computation gives you the intersection number correctly. Okay, so this is all what I do with the example of the Airy curve. Let me now move to the more general case. So what I want now to show you is what is the general expression of a topological recursion, because here the way I have written it here, it's why did I choose to take a residue at 0? Why did I choose this precise 1 over 4 or things like that? Why these numbers? Yeah. Okay. Why these numbers? It's because, so let me now rewrite the same expression in a way where we see clearly how it depends on the spectral curve. So, first of all, let me rewrite this coefficient here. dz1, okay. Let me do a simple thing. Let me multiply by 2z in the numerator, and so 2z in the denominator, so 8z squared. Well, okay, let me put a 4 here on the 2z dz. Let me write it this way. Okay, so let me now get interested in this term, 2z dz1 over z1 square minus z square. Let me write it in a different way. So first, let me not write the dz1. And this, you see, is simply 1 over z1 minus z minus 1 over z1 plus z. And it is so the integral from z prime equals minus z to z of dz prime over z prime over z1 minus z prime to the square. Now multiply everything by dz1. And here you recognize our omega 02. You recognize the b. So this is the integral from z prime equals minus z to z of omega 02 of z1 z prime. So let me now rewrite this here. So the z prime, let me call it dot. Dot is the variable you integrate. It's what I call z prime. Right. Now 2z dz, you recognize that it is dx. You see here dx equals 2z dz. And y equals z. So z times 2z dz, so this z times 2z dz is precisely y dx. Okay. Let me, this 1 over 4, let me put a 1 half here on the 2 there, 2y times dx. Okay, but notice something is that y is an odd function of z. It's an odd function of z, so in fact, let me say that this is, replace the 2y by basically by y of z minus y of minus z. Right. So it's just a rewriting. I will my goal is to put the recursion in a way that now you can apply it to, let's say, the mirror curve of C3 or anything. So basically that will have a good form to apply it to any mirror curve or to any other problem. So I'm somehow trying to see what is specific in this airy example. The other thing is that we are taking a residue at 0, and 0 is the place where dx vanishes. Okay? So in general, we shall replace this residue at 0 by the residue at some points that I will call A. And A are the places where dx vanishes. So dx of A equals 0, and there are several such zeros. So if there are several points at which dx vanishes, so they are the ramification points of the branch cover given by x. So x is a projection from sigma. Remember, x is a projection from sigma to CP1, which makes sigma a branch cover over CP1, and the zeros of dx are the ramification points of that branch cover. So we are summing over all ramification points. Now, what is the role of minus z? Minus z is the other point with the same projection, because x of minus z is the x of minus z equals x of z. Okay, so in general, so basically the map that sends, so let me erase that. The map that sends z to minus z is in fact the involution that exchange the two sheets of a branch cover. So just to illustrate, here we have x and y. The curve is so y square, so this is the curve y square equals x. Okay? A point z on that curve, z and minus z are the two points with the same value of x. On the involution, so let's call it sigma of z equals minus z. The involution that sends z to minus z is the involution that exchanges the two sheets. If you had a spectral curve more complicated with more than two sheets, something like that, in the neighborhood of any ramification point, there is locally an involution which exchanges the two sheets. So let's call it sigma A of z. Well, here for the airy curve, it's that simple thing, but in general, sigma A of z is the involution. So let's define sigma A of z. Sigma A is an involution in a neighborhood of the ramification point A. And sigma A is an involution different from identity, such that sigma A of A equals A, and the projection by x, so let me call it x of sigma A of z, should be equal to x of z. So here we shall replace everywhere that I had minus z, let me replace it by sigma A of z. Here, let me replace by sigma A of z. So, really meaning that you should take the pullback. So, in fact, let me call it sigma A star, acting on the second, acting here. Well, okay. Let me be a little bit sloppier with the notation here, but sigma A acts where you had the minus z before. And here also the denominator, you can see that it is omega 0,1 of z minus sigma A star omega 0,1. Well, okay, everything evaluated at z. So now this is the general form of the topological recursion. So now you can apply this recursion to any spectral curve. So let me conclude, because I think it's nearly time. How much time? Okay, let's go. So now let me conclude. So what we have is that a spectral curve is the data S. So this is my definition of spectral curve here. The spectral curve S is the data of 4 things: sigma, a projection, let's call it pi, a one form that I will call eta, and the one tensor one form that I will call B, such that, so sigma is a Riemann surface it can be what's called a local Riemann surface, so in fact it's not necessarily connected or compact. There is no need to choose it compact or not even connected. Basically, a union of disks, a union of neighborhoods of ramification points would be enough. Pi is a projection from sigma to a base Riemann surface, which here I will call CP1, but you could replace it by sigma 0, another Riemann surface, on which makes a branch cover, so meaning that sigma is a branch cover of sigma 0. And it has ramification points. Let's call it R equals R belongs to R equals the set of ramification points. Eta is a one form, neuromorphic one form on sigma. It does not have to be the restriction of the tautological form on the cotangent bundle. It can be anything you like. And B is a one tensor. So B, as I said, it's a one tensor one form on sigma cross sigma, with a double pole on the diagonal, and normalized such that in any local coordinate, the coefficient is 1, I erased it, but such that in any local coordinate, the coefficient of the double pole is 1. So let's take this normalization. So this is the data of the spectral curve, and now the general definition of topological recursion is the following. Omega Gn of Z1 Zn equals sum over all ramification points. Let me write this as times this bracket, which contains, the bracket contains omega G minus 1 and plus 1 of Z sigma A of Z, Z2, Zn, plus this sum with no 0, 1 of G1 plus G2 equals G, and I1, I2 equals Z2, Zn, and this omega G1, 1 plus cardinal of I1, Z I1, omega G2, 1 plus cardinal of I2, sigma A of Z, and I2. Okay, and where Ka of Z1Z is 1/2 of integral from sigma A of Z to Z of B divided by eta minus sigma A star eta B of Z1 evaluated at Z. So this is the definition of topological recursion for every n larger than 1 on 2g minus 2 plus n, strictly positive.
You forgot residue.
Sorry, residue at n, of course. Okay, so this is the definition. As I said, this is a very strange definition. So on next time, I will try to show how it indeed gives the monofreezing invariance of C3 and how it is related in general to some computations over some MGN, so the relationship to the dual spaces. This is a very strange definition, and the first thing which is really strange is that Z1 seems to play a role very different from Z2, Z3, and so on. It seems not symmetric at all. But you have seen before that in the computation of omega 03, in fact, in the end, we got something symmetric. And it can be proved that this is something general. The result is always symmetric. The definition is non-symmetric, but the result is always symmetric. So omega GNs are symmetric. This is one of the properties of that recursion. It looks like a miracle, but this is one of the reasons why this definition is interesting. And also, there are many other reasons why this definition is interesting. One is because it has applications. So basically, in random matrix models, correlation functions do satisfy this recursion. Gromov-Witten invariants do satisfy this recursion. It is conjectured that John polynomials do satisfy this recursion. Mirza's recursion can be written in this form. So it has many applications. This makes it interesting. But also, by itself, it is a beautiful mathematical object. It has plenty of nice properties. So I don't know what properties you like in mathematics, but for instance, you have some modular invariants. You have tau functions. You have Virasoro algebras. You have many other nice properties. You have special geometry. And what I will show next time is the link to moduli spaces. So basically, they're associated to every spectral curve. There is a kind of a certain moduli space with a certain cohomology class on it, such that the omega GNs are exactly the integrals of that class on this moduli space. And a particular example of this application of this will be to get the Gromov-Witten invariance of C3. And I hope to do that tomorrow. Okay, thank you for your attention.
Is there any other applications for Gromov-Witten invariance of other things? Complete intersections or hypersurfaces?
Yes, well, I would say yes or no, and some of them are not proved. Well, one question is, for instance, what happens for non-toric Calabi-Yau manifolds, like the quintic and so on. The answer is not known, I would say. Some people believe that yes, it can be applied to that. And I don't know, there is orbifold Hurwitz numbers or things like that. I mean, yes, there are plenty of applications also. I didn't mention maps, so discrete surfaces studied by combinatorists. They are also in the story.
Do I understand correctly that it's always non-compact Calabi-Yau?
Well, toric Calabi-Yaus are always non-compact. But
I mean, whatever you can say with topological recursion will be non-compact.
No, I don't agree.
Because spectral curve is compact.
Okay, if the spectral curve is compact, it corresponds to a Calabi-Yau which is non-compact. But you could try to invent a very complicated non-compact spectral curve corresponding to the quintic, for instance.
Also, you said you have some geometry for this quintic waveform.
Well, okay, it's very speculative.
Okay.
I don't want to.
Any other questions? Let's thank Bertrand again.